Well guys, here it is in all of its glory, the Glycine Airman, a very, very prolific watch with a very rich history. It is 12:40 p.m. Let's get down to business. So special thanks to channel member Bad Matt, certified T3 bot, for sending in yet another watch to review. This is a watch that I've been getting a lot of questions about ever since I started my channel. It seems like a lot of watch collectors out there are just very interested in the Glycine Airman. And it makes sense because, as I said just a minute ago, this watch, incredibly prolific, and believe it or not, been around for a very long time. Okay, so let's take a moment and talk about the Glycine name. So, officially founded in Switzerland in 1914, originally called Fabrique de Horlogerie La Glycine, this was actually a watchmaker that specialized in small movements for ladies' watches. But today we are not talking about ladies' watches. We are specifically talking about the Glycine Airman, originally introduced in 1953 to help pilots. Go figure. We can see a little bit of this 24-hour bezel and some of the 24-hour markings on the dial. So when people first look at the Glycine Airman, I think what they're most focused on, initially at least, are the dual crowns, right? So this main crown at 3 o'clock is what actuates the time and date complication. Now, speaking of the date window, there is one here by 3 o'clock. We're going to talk about that because I'm not totally sold on it. Now, the secondary crown is what actuates the bezel. Well, it allows you to actuate the bezel. Here's what I mean. Right now, the bezel's locked. It's not going to move. When you unthread this secondary crown, it allows you to move the bezel any which way. Now, this is a bidirectional rotating bezel, and there's no ratcheting tolerance at all. Very smooth. Now, what's kind of scary is some of these bezels that you get that don't have any ratcheting tolerance, they feel gritty and grimy and not very nice to move around. It feels like metal on metal. Thankfully, with this example of the Glycine Airman, there's none of that. So if we were to move this to, signify any time zone I may be flying into, I could go ahead and clamp it down with the secondary crown and the bezel would not move at all. So again, this secondary crown, really what makes this Glycine Airman the Airman. Okay, so now let us focus on that date window, and I have a few gripes here, okay? I do like the red numerals, okay? Looks very nice, nice contrast with that kind of matte dial. However, the date window doesn't look superbly centered, and I understand there's a whole lot of indexes, a whole lot of markings on that dial. It's trying to give you a bunch of information. I mean, this is a tool watch after all. But I don't like how that 6 is cut. Okay, I don't like how it's cut. What makes it even more kind of confusing is that once you hit the 7, the Arabics flip so that you can read it easier. But the thing is that when you have a 6, and then the numerals are flipped, it could be a 9. You're not sure what that is. It gets cut if you're trying to read this quickly. It just kind of looks like that date window was an afterthought. It might just be me. Again, I'm just one guy reviewing this one watch. So please leave me your opinions about this in the comment section below, and I would love to hear from you. Okay, so although I had a little bit of a criticism about that date complication, I really want to hone in on the handset. So Gato, just pan in here real quick. They did some very nice finishing on that hour hand, a broad arrow hour hand, and the second hand as it's ticking away, it's nice and smooth, but really the stunner here is that hour hand. You see some really nice brushed grains. It just looks very nice, especially with the contrast, again, of that matte dial. Now for just one moment, I want to focus in on this crown, or these crowns, I should say, because there's 2 of them. The main crown, not threaded. However, the crown that is the bezel lock is threaded, and you can see the teeth here on the clamp are actually biting into the serrations of the bezel, giving you just that much more of a kind of proper purchase on that bezel, so you know it's not going anywhere once you secure it into place. It's little details like that that I love to see with this macro lens. And because we mentioned the crown, I'd like to kind of test it, the crown setting and function, and I do want to move the handset around so we can take a look at all the font on the dial. So let's go ahead, again, not a threaded crown. Two very distinct clicks here. So of course, the final position is going to be for the time. You're going to go ahead and move that around nice and smooth. First setting is going to be, well, it should be the date. What is going on here? There we go. Was not turning it enough. Okay, so we've moved the handset around to a more favorable position. We've kind of tested that date window. It seems to line up okay, and it definitely clicks into place when you turn the crown the right way. That was, my error. And there's two definite, distinct crown settings. So you're not going to mistake, the final position for the first position. You're not going to miss the first position. Everything's all well and good. Now, let's talk about the dimensions before we argue about the font on the dial. So this watch is 36.4 by 45.5 millimeters. So again, right around 36 millimeters for the case diameter and well under 50 millimeters for the lug to lug. The most impressive specification as far as I'm concerned though, has to be the case thickness, 11.7 millimeters thick, which is truly wearable, right? That's really not thick at all for an automatic watch. Now, this does have a domed acrylic crystal, and we know it's acrylic because this watch actually does have a few scuffs on the crystal, but you know what? This is essentially a reissue or reinterpretation of a vintage watch, so I like seeing it being worn. I like seeing a few battle scars. I'm a vintage collector, so I say wear your watches, beat them up, and don't worry about it. Okay, Glycine Airman. Honestly, in my opinion, one of the least offensive fonts that I've ever seen on a watch. I really, truly love the font they chose. It's very classic, old school, not hyper stylized. It's not something that you look at and you think they've overdone it. It's just enough to designate what the watch is without being too much. I think they did an incredible job, truly. Yeah, I don't know how anyone could really find this offensive. They chose to just write Glycine Airman. There's no logo on top of the font. It's just the font, and you know me, I prefer either or. But yeah, great job with everything about what is on the dial. I know some people argue that this watch is a bit busy, and I totally understand that, but when we're talking about the font, it's definitely not a paragraph. Definitely tasteful. Now, speaking of tasteful, classic styling, understatedness, a bit of a low-key subdued tool watch, it's interesting because Glycine, as of 2016, is now owned by a watch group that is not very well known for anything I just said. Tastefulness, understatedness, subdued, simple styling, classical design language. No. I would go as far as to say Glycine is now owned by the antithesis of classic, tasteful design language. Here we go. In 2016, Glycine was acquired by Invicta Watch Group. Okay, now, according to the internet, this relationship is more for, quote, marketing and distribution, but here's where I call BS. Right around when Glycine was acquired by Invicta, Glycine started releasing Invicta type things. Here's what I mean. Although Glycine doesn't make hyper oversized, gaudy, gauche watches, right around that time, I'm gonna say 2017, 2018, Glycine started releasing various colorways that were much more homage-y, right? It really came to a head when they released the Glycine Combat Sub that was literally like a snowflake hand away from being a Tudor Black Bay GMT. It was just so on the nose. I think Glycine's better than that. I think that they don't have to release these Rolex homage, Tudor homage homages, right? So when I say homage, I'm saying that they are kind of like an homage. They're homage-ish, homage-ish. Glycine's just much better than Invicta. They don't need to do that. And what was very, very disheartening, a little bit depressing, a little bit took the wind out of my sails, is upon doing research for this review, when I typed in this watch's reference number, GLO159, I found it for sale on the Invicta website. Now, what's funny is the Invicta website didn't even have the accurate specs for this watch. It said it had a sapphire crystal, which it didn't. It said it had a threaded crown, which it doesn't, unless they're talking about the secondary crown. It said it had a GMT movement, which it does not. You can see the second hand is sweeping quite smoothly, but this is powered by a Sellita-based, what they call the GL293 automatic, 42-hour power reserve, second hand, hour hand, minute hand, date complication. Again, 28,800 BPH movement, but it's no GMT complication as far as the movement goes. So, yeah, very frustrating. They had it listed on the Invicta website for, let's see, $1,611.48. Now, this is going to be a bit confusing, okay? The GL0159 has also been listed as what they call the #1 limited edition, which only made 1,000 units worldwide, okay? That is fairly limited. But when we flip the case back on this specific one, I don't think it is the #1 limited edition because it doesn't have the #1 engraving on the case back. But let's go ahead and take a look at that case back. So we can see here, this is a screw down case back, 1 atmosphere, says Glycine GL0159. Oh dang, hold on. This is, haha, I spoke too soon. This is the #1 limited edition. 0244 out of 1,000. So this is 244 out of 1,000. Here's what confused me though. Before I saw that, I was looking up pictures of the #1 limited edition, and they all had the it said #1 on the case back. So that was a bit confusing. So cool. We do in fact have the #1 limited edition, and again, limited to 1,000 pieces worldwide. So a lot of these people, Seiko, Panerai, they do limited editions and they're not very limited. But this, legit limited as far as I'm concerned. Very cool. And guys, even when we look at the profile of the watch, everything from the lug shape to the case and bezel, and definitely that crystal where we get some crystal distortion, it just screams vintage. This just looks old and I love it. All right, guys, here we go. The Glycine Airman, the first ever Glycine on my 7.5-inch wrist on this channel anyway. For reference, again, my wrist is 7.5 inches, and this is being worn on a Vario leather strap. Looks very nice on this watch. Definitely fits the whole aesthetic. Now, guys, I'm gonna say something a bit controversial. This is the best thing Invicta Watch Group makes right now, in my opinion. This is a great watch. It's very fun to wear. It's not cumbersome. It feels very light on the wrist. It feels like a proper vintage tool watch. It's not clunky. It feels, again, like a vintage watch, and there's some usefulness to it as far as the bezel and the dial markings. Now, I'm not a pilot. I'm not an airman, but this is just a very fun kind of blast from the past watch to wear. And being a vintage watch collector, I'm just absolutely enjoying this. So yeah, easily the best thing you will find on Invicta's website, hands down. There, I said it. Look at that crystal. I love it. Oh yeah, the Lume is already glowing and I didn't even hit it with the UV torch. Let's go ahead and do that. Bow. Dang. This is a pretty dang good Lume. You know, the index is very small, so they're not going to have a ton of Lume on there, but the broad hour hand, Big arrow and that minute hand. Love it. Look at that. Good job. Glycine, great lume. So, we have spent an afternoon with the Glycine Airman. What do I think? Well, I kind of just told you. I think that this is a very impressive little watch from a watch group that we would not expect, right? The fact that this is in any way attached to Invicta, a little bit mind-blowing. But I'm excited to review some more Glycines in the future. If this is any indication of their quality, then I am very, very impressed. Now, this is not the first Glycine I've ever held or worn, but it is definitely the first one I've had on camera on this channel. So I'm very thankful to my channel members, especially Bad Matt Certified T3 Bot. Thank you so much for allowing me to do what I do. Guys, this is not an inexpensive watch, well over $1,000. This one is, you know, hyper limited. Not hyper limited, but it is limited. 1,000 pieces worldwide. Hyper limited would be, you know, under 1,000. But still, you are getting a nice, simple, true blast from the past Glycine Airman. This is essentially a reissue of the original Glycine Airman. So this does not have a true GMT complication. It doesn't have any of the other interesting finishes and some of the other things you can find online. This is just a really bare bones, simple, original quote-unquote Glycine Airman, and I love it. I absolutely love it. So let me know what you think, guys. Again, commenting really does help my videos within the algorithm. YouTube is ever changing, but we're just trying to do the best we can here, and we do this all thanks to you guys. We broke 163,000 subscribers. I'm thankful for every one of you. I can't believe we are here, and it's just getting bigger and better here on this channel. Guys, I love you. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay blessed. Check out my personal website, thetimtellershop.com. Check out the affiliate links in the description below. When you shop using those links, you help me out a bunch. You can become a channel member just like Bad Matt by clicking the join button next to the subscribe button. It's like YouTube's Patreon. We really do support each and every one of you guys there. And I will see you on the next one, guys. I'm Jory Goodman, the Time Teller, and always remember, I didn't invent time. I just tell it.